The thing that I noticed is that there seemed to be no security around him. He was there with one other person.
Now it would be different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, and this was 6 months before he was killed.
Yeah, really.
And I was thinking, what a remarkable lack of security. I mean, I didn't know that I was picking up on something.
Very sad. The fact that he would actually need security in Israel.
What a difference it has made for the direction that Israel has gone.
Yeah, I think so.
It's just
Really consequential. I agree.
it was. Yeah.
All right, so we're going to start. We're just a few days before Rosh Hashanah, so I really felt like I couldn't just do a regular Talmud. So two of the texts we're going to study today are from the Talmud, and then one is one of the most famous prayers for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, the Unatan Tokef. We're just going to study a portion of that. Most of what we're going to do today is examine. There's 3 texts. In the 3 texts, there's going to be 4 metaphors for the high holiday season. So I want to point out what the metaphors are. I'd like your participation in how the metaphors make us feel, because that's the point of a metaphor in prayer, is to give you a sort of feeling and then see how effective it is and where it takes you. Each of these metaphors is a place or a space, some kind of space. So you're entering a space in each of these. So the holidays themselves then metaphorically become physical spaces, and you'll see each of these metaphors are a specific type of space. Okay, that's the. So that may sound a little abstract right now. I think you'll get it as soon as we start studying. So, for this, we're going to start on the Unatan Tokef. So that's the. You see at the bottom, how many we'll pass on. We're actually not going to look at that. We're going to look at the second paragraph there. The great shofar will be sounded. And I'm going to read everything in Hebrew today, and you can follow in English. I'll do a little translating, but you got the English right alongside. So in the Hebrew, I'm on it's the third paragraph, but it's the second big paragraph. Uva shofar gadol yitaka, big shofar sounds. V'kol demama daka yishma, and at the same time, a small sound, a still small voice. Umalachim yechafezun. So angels are trembling. V'chilu ra'ada yochezun. A trembling takes hold of them. Vayamru hine yom hadin, and they say, "Here comes Judgment Day." All right. So lifkod al tzva maron badin. To lifkod, it's a good word there. To bring into judgment. As a prosecutor, God brings into judgment everybody, all the dwellers on high. Ki lo yisku be'enecha badin. Who will not be acquitted that day in court. Okay, that's the first metaphor. The first metaphor there is a courtroom scene. So there's a courtroom scene, and I think courtroom scenes in general, in our kind of nightmares, insecure places, dangerous places, because we always feel like we're being judged, and there's a great possibility that we're going to be convicted. This is even more so. Because, first of all, it's all stacked against us. The judge, jury, and prosecutor are all the same, are all God. And the thing is that God knows exactly what you did, and you know exactly what you did too. So you're in a courtroom where you're almost certain, you're certainly going to be convicted. And the only way you're not going to be punished is by throwing yourself on the mercy of the court. But it's the court, the prosecutor, the jury, everybody. But that's the first space. That's the first metaphoric space. And I don't think it's so controversial to say, this is a frightening metaphor. This is a metaphor. You're going into judgment, and you are not. There's not like a 50-50 chance you're guilty, not guilty. Like most trials in America, right? The person is guilty, but the thing is, you know that you're guilty, and it's not a question of pleading guilty or not guilty. I mean, you're absolutely guilty, and you're throwing yourself on the mercy of that court. And that's you. So that's the space of the high holidays. Is you entering this courtroom, where your guilt's already been decided. And it's very related to a different metaphor of, which I'm not going to go into detail, but just to give you a sense of the fear that this strikes. There's 3 books, which you may have heard about, you get written in one of 3 books. One is a white book, which is for life, because you're basically a very good person. One is a black book, which is for death, where you're a bad person. And then one is the gray book, where we don't know. And then most of us are in that gray book, some good, some bad. But the metaphor of the books itself is very frightening, because it says on Rosh Hashanah it is written, on Yom Kippur it is sealed, and so the hand is writing, and you don't know where book you're going to end up in. This is similar, but this is a courtroom. Okay, first metaphor is a courtroom. Now I'm going to go on because I'd like your input on whether the next metaphor, which is in the very next sentence, is an easier to take metaphor, not quite as frightening, or maybe in some ways even more frightening. I don't know. Kivakarat v'chol ba'olam ya'avrun lefanecha kivnei maron. So everybody on earth comes before you like a flock of sheep. Kivakarat ro'e edro, like a shepherd taking care of a sheep. Ma'avir tzono tachat shifto. A lot of lovely melodies for this, but it means that the shepherd is herding you with his shepherd shaft. Kain tavir v'tispor v'timneh. That's what he's doing to you. God is doing, counting and taking care of it. Tifkod nefesh kol chai. And just like a shepherd with a staff is watching carefully over all of his sheep, so God is doing that to you. So this is the second metaphor. It's an entirely different space. Like you blink your eye in this prayer, and you're whisked from the courtroom to where? The field. You're the fields, and you're a sheep. You're one of the many sheep, and God is the shepherd. So that's the second metaphor. You're actually going into the field, feeling like you are one of those sheep, one of many sheep, and God is the shepherd.
But
Okay.
it conveys a whole different sense then.
Yeah. So what's the difference here?
One is a much more peaceful and protected kind of a situation.
Yeah, so I would say, at least at first glance, this is an easier to take metaphor. It's a gentler metaphor. God is the shepherd. You are the sheep. First of all, just the pastoral setting, which is much different than in
society.
In an agrarian society. It's even better. It's more familiar. I'll point out quickly that the first one also that you're alone. You are the defendant. And now there's an element to that because each sheep passes before God, but you're one of many sheep, actually in some ways undifferentiated. So there's a fellowship of human beings here, so you're all together. So Charlie, then Jay.
You can also look at it as that you've lost your identity in this group.
Yeah.
Exactly. You
That's
lost
a
your
little
identity.
scary.
Yeah.
If I can
You're
ask,
playing no part, and you have no individuality.
Yeah, so there are some negative elements to this metaphor. Also,
Right.
both of these have negative elements too. You may want to think about what in general happens to sheep. Well, they don't all. I mean, I don't know. I mean, remember this is an agrarian society, and some of them are just, their wool's taken or their milk is taken. But there's always that possibility they get slaughtered too, and that's got to be in the back of the mind of the reader and the writer of this. Alina.
Yeah, I was going to say that shepherd, you're not anonymous. The shepherd actually knows every one of his sheep. I see them doing this all the time in the desert. They know your sheep, and when he's going across, he's actually looking, is somebody ill? Is somebody going to go to market?
Yeah.
So you are being, judged.
Yeah, so I think that's true. Well, you're being judged. You're being noted.
Yes.
Yes, I mean there is a sense of individuality. Also, there's a sense here that there is somebody, something, some force, some power that knows better than me about where I should be. I'm going to relax, put my fate into the hands of that person. So that's God. So there's also a surrender here, more of a gentle surrender than the judge is going to sentence me to death. There's a shepherd. You have a feeling the sheep don't really know what's going on, but they're going to follow the lead of the shepherd. They trust the shepherd. I don't know that I've ever met a shepherd before, but I think there's a fondness that the shepherd has for the sheep, a sense of responsibility and care. We've got shepherds all through the Torah that become great leaders, like Moses and David, become extraordinary leaders. So they develop a sense of empathy and leadership skills. So you've got that as a positive. I think there are negative features to this metaphor that are just below the surface. What happened to the sheep ultimately? Losing your individuality.
I mean, the sheep have a choice. They can either be fleeced or killed.
Yeah.
Wonderful choices.
Right.
They
And
don't
without
have
a real understanding, though, that that's going to happen, why that's going to happen, feeling like maybe, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. There's also that, too.
But you feel like you're protected, too, because a shepherd tends to protect his flock.
Yeah, right.
You can always take
Right.
them to the flock.
Okay, so I want to get through all these. That's the second metaphor. So turn the page over. The next two are from the Talmud. And some of this is familiar, actually, in some ways, boilerplate Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur teaching. In one happens to be very startling. And although I've seen it before, it was just this year that I noticed how interesting it was. And anyways, Rabbi, keep a statement. So I'm going to start in the Hebrew again. You've got the English. Averot shebein adam lamakom. Okay, so there are two types of sins in Talmudic literature. There's between you and God, which would be a ritual sin. Like you had a cheeseburger, you didn't hurt anybody except the animal. You had a sheep burger. Right? No, never mind. Right. Don't eat sheep. It's just not a good idea during the high holiday season. It's a little too close to home. Anyway, so there's two types of sin: the ritual sin between you and God. For those Yom Kippur mechaper averot. Averot sheben adam lamakom Yom Kippur mechaper. So Yom Kippur, Yom Kippurim, Yom Kippur. All you need to repair those, to atone for those, is the day itself. Right. Presumably the stuff you do on the day, the prayers, things like that too. That's all you need. Averot sheben adam lechavero and Yom Kippur mechaper. But this is famous, right? But the sins that you commit against another person, sins between a person and their friend, their fellow, whatever, interhuman sins, Yom Kippur does not mechaper. It doesn't atone for. Until you make up with your friend. Okay, and I probably learned that when I was 4 years old. Right, it's something that stays with you. If you go to Hebrew school, any kind of Hebrew school, they teach you that. There's two types of sins. With God, you can make it up on Yom Kippur, but don't think that you can make it up with the fellow human being just by praying on Yom Kippur. You actually have to go through the work. This is the work of the holidays, of reconciling your relationships yourself. Okay, I'm going to go on there. Now here he goes. Darash Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. So Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, and he's quoting now Leviticus, Mikol chatotechem lifnei Adonai tit horu, okay, that you can become purified from all of your sins. That tit horu is very important here, adding an element that what you're seeking on Yom Kippur is purity. So this is a metaphor, by the way, too, right? There's no physical thing that goes on in Yom Kippur that makes you suddenly clean. So again, it's another metaphor where you become purified. Averot sheben adam lamakom Yom Kippur mekaper. So he's just now adding to that. The sins between you and God, Yom Kippur does atone for. Averot sheben adam lechavero. But sins between human beings, ein Yom Kippur mekaper. Yom Kippur is not effective for those. Ad sheyirtzeh chavero, until you make up with your fellow yourself. Now here we have Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Akiva, I used to think he just comes in and says something interesting. I think he is coming with a differing opinion here. So he's disagreeing with what is essentially the party line. And really the only way this functions in a human system. Remember, the party line is that God can forgive you with Yom Kippur alone, but don't expect purity from Yom Kippur alone unless you make up with the person. So here's what Rabbi Akiva says. Ashrechem Yisrael. Happy are you, Israel, O Israel. Lifnei mi atem mitarim. Because who before whom do you receive purification? Who purifies you? Mi metaheretchem, who purifies you? Avichem shebashamayim, our Father in heaven, your Father in heaven. Shenemar, now he quotes from Ezekiel. V'zarakti alehem mayim torim, I sprinkle on you purifying waters. V'tihartem, and then you are pure. V'omer, now Jeremiah, mikveh Yisrael, the mikveh of Israel. I think there's a bad translation, a fountain. It's not fountain. This is a mikveh. We know what a mikveh is. So mikveh Yisrael, God is the mikveh of Israel. So Israel's mikveh. Ma mikveh mitaheret et atmeim, just like a mikveh purifies you. Afa kadosh baruch hu mitaheret Israel. So God purifies you. Okay. So first I want to tell you what I think the third metaphor is. Then we'll try to tease out the implications of it. But the third metaphor is the mikveh. So the high holidays, it's a third space that the high holidays could represent, could symbolize, or it symbolizes the high holidays. A mikveh. So a mikveh is a place, well, you know what it is. Mikveh is a body of water, a pure body of water, either a natural body of water, like the ocean or a river or a stream, or you can make them, out of natural water, rainwater, but they are a body of water that purifies you. Now here, in the other two metaphors, you have sort of a sensory expression. You know what a court kind of looks and smells like and sounds like, and you kind of know what sheep, what a pastoral setting smells like and feels like. But a mikveh is even stronger. It's the water. So the water, and the mikveh, remember, you have to, most of you have been to mikveh. I mean, if you've never been to a mikveh, well, you've been to a swimming pool, you've been to an ocean, right? The mikveh is only effective if you're immersed entirely. That's right. So you're immersed entirely in water. Right. And what happens spiritually is you are pure. You're purified. So it's for women in menstrual cycles. It's for converts, but anybody can go at any time. And there's a customs to go on Yom Kippur, before Yom Kippur, also on Friday. So the high holidays, it's saying, is a mikveh where you go in and God purifies you from your sins. So what I think Akiva said, that's the metaphor. Right. What I think Akiva though is saying is he's disagreeing in a subtle way that Yom Kippur is ineffective in the sins between human beings. Because that's what the other rabbis are saying. It's not going to work in the sins between human beings. He's disagreeing with that. He's saying it can have some effect. That's why he says what he says. He says Yom Kippur is like a mikveh. You go in the mikveh, you come out, you'll feel better. You'll feel purified. And one of the reasons I say that is because it's not always possible to reconcile with another human being. There's all sorts of reasons why it's not. Sometimes the person's dead. That's the most obvious reason. But sometimes the other person doesn't want it. Or sometimes it's just not possible for you at that point in your life. So Akiva is saying it's like a mikveh. And here, again, the metaphor has an element of surrender, like the sheep. Just go into that mikveh, the Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah services, and you will feel better. You'll feel a sense of God coming over you like these healing waters. And that will purify you. So that's the third.
But one's a passive one versus another one that's a proactive one. In the previous case, you've got to do something more physically demanding.
You have to go in the mikveh. Is that what you mean? Is it?
No,
or the sheep?
is passive.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, for Akiva, there is this. That's why it's similar to the sheep. It's just go in, just dive in.
Right.
Dive in, and there's. I mean, for both, there's a sense of grace, which we think is a Christian concept. It's really not. But grace is that God will do things for you even if you don't deserve them.
Right.
And that's one of the points of religion, is that God can do that for you. God will, because we're all imperfect, we're all sinners. So there's a sense of grace in the mikveh itself, of healing waters, whether you deserve it or not.
Right, but with the mikveh, you are choosing to go.
Yeah.
Not somebody isn't choosing you to do it.
You are choosing. You're choosing it, and there's an openness to it also too. You have to.
It seems like a really easy out for sins.
Yeah. Although Akiva's being subtle here. He's not saying, no, I don't agree with you, Elazar. He could say that. He doesn't say, I don't agree with you, Elazar. I think God forgives us no matter what. But he's saying, here's another way of looking at it. Yom Kippur is like a mikveh, that you can come out feeling better.
Right.
So don't avoid, because this is what I find too, so don't avoid Yom Kippur altogether, because you're not ready to reconcile with somebody. So what's the point? So Yom Kippur still has this healing quality to it, just as a mikveh has a healing quality. So I think it's for Akiva, who is really a deeply pious person, first of all, it's an important and radical thing to say, because he's opposing the common sense and also the Hebrew school view of Yom Kippur, which is you must reconcile with your friend. He's not saying you shouldn't reconcile with your friend, but he's saying let's explore this metaphor and use the holiday the best you can.
It's interesting to think about those three metaphors in a different progression, though. You go from the sheep to the courtroom to the mikveh. You're moving from kind of being a little bit oblivious to what's happening with the shepherd, making the determinations. In the courtroom, you're aware of what's happening, but you're still not taking any action other than being present and accepting the judgment. And to move to the mikveh, you have to make the choice to do that. You may not be able to reconcile, but you have to choose to enter that realm, so to speak.
Yeah, okay.
There's another space that may not be part of what you wanted to say, but I mean, it says on high earlier on, suggesting the hierarchy of heaven. So when did the concept of on high come into Judaism? I mean, this prayer is fairly late. I think it was written maybe 1,000 years ago.
This is an early strand of the Talmud, so this would be, Akiva is like 150.
No, but the prayer talks about on high.
Oh, the prayer.
Yeah.
The prayer is Middle Ages.
So when did this concept?
No, but on high is. I mean, you have it in the Bible. I mean, Isaiah, Ezekiel go to heaven on high. I mean, the hierarchical model of heaven being the place of God is really ancient.
Okay.
But as long as you mention that, we'll look at the last one, because there's this more on high. Something to think about anyway. So this is another. This is the last one, the last metaphor. Tanya, Amar Rabbi Ishmael ben Elisha. So Ishmael, the son of Elisha. So Ishmael was a contemporary Rabbi Akiva, and often his antagonist, his study partner, Stavruta. And he was also a high priest. You know from the story that he was a priest. He was a high priest. High priests could be rabbis too. Not anymore. Well, I mean, a Kohen could be a rabbi, but he functioned as a high priest, and he functioned as a rabbi. And you can tell from the story. And even though it doesn't say it, it has to be. This story can only take place on Yom Kippur, because the high priest only entered the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur. Yeah. So Pam echad nichnasni laktir ketoret lifnei v'lifnim. So one time I went to the Holy of Holies to do my job. which is to put spices. But we know Ishmael was a high priest, and this had to have been taken place on Yom Kippur. So he's very matter of fact about it. But of course, that ceremony is surrounded by all sorts of incense and smoke and pomp, and we have it during the Avodah service, and we act outside of this metaphor. So this is, you go into the temple, the Holy of Holies, the place where no human being is ever supposed to go except one person on Yom Kippur, one day a year. And it's extremely frightening because there's a sense that the person could die. You do one thing wrong. It says that all through the Torah. You do one thing wrong in the Holy of Holies, then you're going to die. It's like entering a nuclear installation. You make the slightest mistake here and there, and you blow up yourself, you blow up the whole world. So the idea is you're supposed to be very careful. And in the Talmud, it actually says that they would tie ropes around the high priest, because if he dies, they can't go in to get him, and there's a chance he could die, so they could pull him out. I mean, but anyhow, so he's just telling the story. One time I was there, so despite the great fear associated with that act, somebody did it once a year, at least once a year. So v'ra'iti akatriel ya. So I saw. Now this is a word, a name of God that nobody understands. People would claim to understand it. Only appears once this time in the Talmud, but it appears to be God. Akatriel ya seems to be God. Why he calls him a Katriel Yah, I don't want to go into it, but I've looked into it. Nobody really knows what that word means, but it seems to be some name of God that the Talmud, that Rabbi Ishmael knew anyway. Adonai Tzvaot, the Lord of Hosts, Shehu Yoshev Al Kisei Ram Benisa, and he's sitting on his high throne. So I'm going to tell you right now, that's the fourth metaphor is God's throne room. That's Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah for us, is us entering God's throne room. So we're entering the courtroom, we're entering the fields as sheep, we're entering the mikveh. This is the fourth metaphor, we're entering God's throne room. Again, I want you to think about, we don't have time to talk about it, but think about the emotional resonance of each of these. But so now we're on the throne room, God's throne room. But here's what happens. So because you might think right away this is very scary, like the courtroom metaphor. Yeah. Especially the throne is on high. Okay. Ve'amarli, Ishmael b'ni. So God says to him, Ishmael, my son, barcheni, bless me. So give me a blessing. Totally unexpected. I mean, this completely undermines what you might think is going to happen. Because in the court, you're not expecting the judge, who is also the jury and the prosecutor, to say, hey, defendant, give me a blessing. You don't expect that at all. So this disrupts the hierarchy right away. First of all, b'ni is nice. He calls him my son. But also, give me a blessing? All right, anyway. Amarti lo. So luckily he's got a blessing up his sleeve in case that happens, in case God ever asks you for a blessing. This is what he says. Yihirat somel fanecha. May it be your will. Sheyich b'shura chamecha et ka'ascha, so that your mercy should overcome your anger. V'yigolu rachamecha al midotecha, and that your mercy should be your most important attribute. V'titnaheg im banecha b'minata rachamim, so that you act with your children with the attribute of mercy. V'tichnas lahem lifni mishurat hadin, and you act out of the precepts of the law. In other words, by law we deserve to be punished, but you act outside the precepts of the law. In other words, with mercy. V'na'na birosho. So God nods. That's a good blessing, giving his assent to the blessing. The kamash malan. So what we learn from this? What do we learn from this story? Now, of course, whenever the Talmud says, "What do we learn from this?" they often pick out the least interesting thing. I have no idea what you learn from this stuff, but one thing you learn. Well, I'll finish. The kamash malan shalot tehei birchat hediot kala be'einecha. Actually, is a kind of point that you shouldn't think of a blessing of a lesser individual as being something that's not worthwhile. Like even the smallest individual can give a blessing to the person that's got the highest status. Because Ishmael, who is a human being, gave a blessing to God, and God nodded. But what you really learn, so just in terms of the metaphor, is that it's not as frightening as you think that God is actually reaching out to you in this particular metaphor. So walking into God's throne room, which at first glance could seem utterly frightening and horrifying because you're a sinner, in fact, God breaks the hierarchy right away, and God has a need for you. God has a loneliness. You think of that, sitting on that throne as being this great status. It's also the loneliest place you could possibly imagine. And God has this need for human beings, need for actions, just interactions with human beings, and a need for affirmation from human beings, because there's a loneliness to God. And it's an amazing, really, metaphor here. So it's God's throne room with God seeking you as company. and as someone who can offer a blessing and affirmation.
This is another example of the anthropomorphizing of God.
Yeah.
With feelings and things like that.
Well, in each of these metaphors, which in general, these metaphors are metaphors of space. Right? I mean, you've got the courtroom, you've got the fields, you've got the mikveh, you've got the throne room, but God appears in different guises in each of them too. So you have that anthropomorphizing in each one. So God's the judge, God's the shepherd.
It also
the mikveh is the only one. But in the mikveh, what I have to say is that God is the water. Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah are the water, but God's the water.
It also brings back the memory of what took place in the desert when God gets mad at Israel and wants to kill him and says to Moses, "It will be your offspring who will be my new nation." And Moses talks him out of it.
Yeah, right.
So that premise still holds with this particular dimension of the description here.
Yeah, Ishmael's playing that role.
Yeah,
the role of talking God into something.
Fascinating.
Right. But the idea that it's a blessing, right? That I'm conferring it upon you as an act of love and friendship, and that's even more powerful.
And Heschel has his book on God.
God in Search of Man. Yeah.
Kind of like
that's right.
Thing,
Yeah. Is that in? I don't remember. Is that in the Heschel book? Is this scene?
I can't remember this one, but the whole idea is God and God needs.
Right. Yeah. It's an astonishing. Both these things, Akiva and this one, really are radical, versions of what you think about God and what God expects of you and what God does for you.
Did you catch Ishmael ben Isha foretells the whole story? Because Ishmael, God will hear you, and Isha, God will save you. So the whole story is encapsulated in his name.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, Shana Tova.